Hello and welcome to Real Men Feel. This is Andy Grant, and I'm very pleased to have you join us today. This is actually episode 45. We're almost at the year anniversary of this program, which is super cool. Since when we started it, we thought, well, we'll do this once and see what happens. And we keep doing it. So glad you could make it. Again, I'm excited tonight. We're going to be talking about the Good Men Project. So first, I should introduce our first good man, and that'd be Appio Hunter.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you saying that. It's always been fun to be here with you, Andy.
Yeah, it is. And tonight's guest is Michael Kasdan. Michael is the Director of Special Projects for the Good Men Project. So I guess that means that we are officially a special project, and we need some special assistance, perhaps. I know. But regardless
we
of
actually just made up the title.
Oh, good. Oh, we love made-up titles, so welcome.
We do it all the time.
So it's great to have you here tonight. How are you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Cool. So in the world of men and organizations and things happening, there were really two groups that I had ever heard of, and one was the Mankind Project, and the other is the Good Men Project. So for guys that have no idea what it is, could you just kind of start with telling us, what the Good Men Project is?
Sure. So the Good Men Project is it's a media company, meaning it's an online website and online magazine, and we cover all sorts of topics, very very wide range, from sex and relationships to ethics to sports to social justice to parenting. And the MO of the Good Men Project, and I can get into a little bit of the history of it later because it's kind of interesting, is the conversation no one else is having, that modern men don't, traditional masculinity of just sort of being tough guys, don't necessarily care about things other than sports and beer, is not really where we're at as a society. So it's a really interesting conversation. Men and women are involved, and I've been involved in wearing different hats of the Good Men Project for about 3.5 years now.
Cool. Yeah, once I saw your tagline, I knew we've got to have someone on. We've got to get involved, because I often describe this show as, well, these are the conversations most men aren't having.
Exactly.
So it felt very synchronistic with what you're up to. And so why don't we back up? Can you tell me how this project, how the website originated?
Sure. So it originated actually, and that story is actually before my time at the Good Men Project, but I've been around long enough to understand the history. It actually started by a venture capitalist, young guy named Tom Matlack, who realized, I don't know exactly how old he was. I think he was in his 30s. He partied and had a good time and was sort of living his life. And he had an evening where he kind of realized that he didn't really know what it meant to be a man and didn't really know what it meant to be good. And he decided that he wanted to write a book that would explore the diversity of masculinity. And he traveled the country and talked to, men of different ethnicities and different ages, and gay men and straight men and black men and white men, and men in prisons and men in all sorts of different jobs. And he wrote a book called The Good Men Book, which was a collection of essays. And he came to this social media and advertising consultant named Lisa Hickey, foreshadowing she's now the CEO of Good Men Project, and said, "Hey, I'd like to market this book." And she set up a website, and she set up a Facebook page to sell the book. And what happened was they didn't sell too many books. But what happened was they had a lot of people coming to the website for these short little articles. The Facebook group grew. There was a conversation happening, and at some point they realized this book's not going to be a bestseller, but I think what we might have here is a media company. So Tom asked Lisa to run it, and she's been running it. We've been around about 6 years, and we now get about 3+ million unique visitors to the website a month. We have a pretty big Facebook group following, and And I think what's interesting is it's kind of evolved from a static, online magazine basically, to actually now what I'm really doing as the director of special projects, which we did make up, but I actually do have a job. And the job is to actually make it more community-based and more interactive. So we've started these communities that we call social interest groups around issues, where we bring people together. We have a phone call once a week. We communicate in between. We try and build community and also do some social change. And whether the topic is men's mental health, whether it's stopping racism, whether it's non-heteronormative, parenting. So we have a gay dad with straight kids and a straight mom with gay kids, and how do you do that? So all those sorts of conversations. We have a group I'm running now on the disposability of men, where we're focusing on football and sports and head injuries. So we're shifting, or at least we're attempting to shift from a business that's just sort of a website to really something that's a community or a set of communities.
Cool. Yeah. So that's what I really liked about it. It isn't just come read some stuff.
Right.
Yeah. And I've seen Lisa describe it as a participatory media company.
Yes, we're a participatory media company. So we do things. So we have our premium members who pay either $5 or $20 or $50 a year. We have a Facebook page for those guys. For those people, they help drive content. A lot of times, people who are readers become writers and become editors. We have weekly calls with the publisher. So every Friday at 3:00 Eastern, we have a call that's a really, it's kind of the most fascinating call I'm on. It's a bunch of really smart, interesting, diverse people trying to kind of process the events of the week together. And so we've tried to use, Facebook pages, but also just getting on the phone with folks. We've done some live events too. We've had like live storytelling events. We're trying to sort of bridge that gap from just being sort of static, here's an article, go read it, to really sort of having a conversation.
Cool.
And what's really interesting about the site, because I actually stumbled across it about a year or so ago, and then I forgot about it. But when the first time that I visited the site, I thought it was really fascinating because all the different subjects that were there, and so many of them, had just incredible insights, and especially told from such a personal perspective by many of the authors. But what really struck me about where you're talking about just now, as far as the special projects and the community outreach and creating these community impact, if you will, for me, it seemed like just the presence of the stories and the different points of view and the perspectives already were having that impact just by presenting that content, having it out there.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And I think one thing that we do really well is storytelling, and I'm a big believer that stories change the world. I've
and we have
lost Michael.
Signal.
Right.
Oh, there we go.
You're back.
You're back.
We lost you for a moment there.
Right, I'm back. I was saying, I've been engaged in so many issues. My back?
Yep, you are.
Oh, okay, sorry. There's so many issues like, how do you deal with racism? How do you deal with sexual assault and rape culture? What we've learned is, the way to change the world, taking racism, for example, you don't really make a lot of progress coming up to someone and yelling at them and telling them they're a racist. But you do make a lot of progress where you say, hey, have you talked to your Black friends about their experiences, with police? And I've seen it. I've seen these stories change people. We do it in men's mental health. There's a huge stigma talking about those issues. So, the more people share their stories, it really can change a culture. Back before my time, I know one of our earlier success stories was, stay-at-home dads and, changing the way they're looked at in our culture, right? It used to be, you'd see commercials and the dads were like the bumbling, person you couldn't, stumbling around, couldn't really take care of the kids, called taking care of his own kids, babysitting. But we told a lot of really deep, connected stories about that, and that I've seen that has the power to change hearts and minds more than any other thing.
Yeah.
And right now, is with the current state of the world, is there any particular traction you're getting, group-wise or content-wise, that's kind of spiking?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, we had a difficult time, or we put some thought during the election cycle as to, because we're not we're a bipartisan organization, right? We have liberals and conservatives and folks from different backgrounds. But what actually led to the social interest groups, the very first social interest group we had, even though we didn't call it that back then, was something we called the Stop Trump Task Force, which didn't ultimately succeed. But we put out a lot of writing, a lot of videos, a lot of memes, because this one man kind of embodied so many of the values that we were speaking out against, misogyny and racism and xenophobia, and it was like all in this one person. So that we wrote a lot, and a lot, and that was difficult, and people get angry when you talk about politics, but we do talk a lot about social justice and ethics on the site. I think after parenting, ethics and social justice are big topics, and now I think a lot of people are coming to the site to try and sort of process what's happening politically. So we have a couple of groups. We have one called Post-Election Rebuilding, whose point is supposed to be to include, both, Hillary voters and Trump voters getting on these calls and trying to sort of pound out commonalities. And that is hard.
I was going to ask, how was that going, or stagnant, or what? Yeah,
I think it's got a lot of potential, but it's really, really hard. But I tell you, it's a lot better, because we have a Facebook group that we communicate at in between our weekly calls, and it can get like Facebook gets. It can get kind of snarky and degenerate, but the calls are actually almost all the calls have been pretty good. So, we also have a course, we do have some classes, and one of the classes we put together is called The Art of Political Resistance, and we have a social interest group that's meeting about that. And that's not so much, it's a little different perspective on politics, but it's, so many people feel like, our democracy is being threatened and our values as a country is being threatened, and what can I do about it, and how do I process all this, and trying to find sort of like-minded folks. So we have that group, I think we just kicked it off last week. I think that's going to be pretty popular, actually.
I would guess it would be, yes,
yeah.
For sure. We had a question here in the chat from Jeremy. The question was, how would you say this rates with the Alison Armstrong and PAC's work and others such as MDI, formerly the Men's Divisions International, and the Sterling Institute of Relationships, or the work of the Hero's Journey from Campbell, or the Iron John mythology? How would you say that relates to what you guys are doing relates to all of that?
Interesting. So Jeremy has far more depth of knowledge than I do on this topic, because some of those things are not familiar to me. But I am a fan of Campbell and the Hero's Journey, and so I've quoted his work in my work. But I think the one thing that we try and process, culturally, is that hero myth, and I think Campbell's work is amazing and interesting and helps me to understand the world. But we also have this myth as like, this one masculine man, hero, and a lot of the way we come at things are, you might not be like a tough guy who likes to change tires, or a guy who's super into sports, and there's a diversity in that. So a lot of the values are, very progressive values. So I'm not super familiar with some of the things that Jeremy mentioned, but I think the conversation we're having, I think is fascinating, because it cuts across so many issues, and also it includes men and women. I like to say, if a lot of people say like, oh, I'm a woman, can I write for the Good Men Project? And I'm like, well, actually, the CEO is a woman. So it does have a little bit of a feminist bent. But I'm very okay with that. But I do think that if we're just a bunch of guys talking, like we're just talking to ourselves, we're not having a conversation. And I think that these issues that we're talking about, like, yes, there are men's issues. There are aspects of masculinity that are harmful to men. They're difficult. I think traditional stereotypes of, you have to be tough, you have to be the earner. There's a lot of pressure there, right? You have to go out and get the girl. You have to, be a champion and get lots of sex. There's a lot of pressure on men. We see it in a lot of areas. Mental health is a big focus and has been a big focus of mine. And of course there are women's issues, but these issues, like they're the same issues. They're kind of flip sides. Like I really believe that if you take the stereotype of a man and say, okay, you don't have to be the earner all the time, and it's okay to be emotionally connected. And the flip side of that is women want to be in boardrooms, and so it's kind of better for everyone, in my view. If we're more progressive about these things, and we look at all of this as less of a zero-sum game and more like we grow it for everyone. So that's kind of become my view as I've connected to these stories and sort of tried to process what's going on.
Now, a lot of the stories that I read in my first sojourn into the site were based off of very much American culture, and I see there's a lot of influence of American culture in the site. But I'm curious to know, is there an international reach? Do you get perspectives from other people in other countries, other cultures that might be more open to men expressing themselves more so emotionally and expressing themselves in their relationship with other men from those cultural perspectives?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. So we're based in the States, but we do have international reach. We have a lot of folks from Australia and Britain, and those are Westerny kind of cultures, of course, not super different. But I think it's really interesting. Like, there's definitely a lot of things we talk about are very Western cultural standards and mores, and I read and have written about and have interviewed, guys like Dr. Andrew Solomon, who writes about mental health, but also has traveled the world and shown how, these values aren't like the values. It's just kind of one set of choices. So I think that multicultural perspective is something we definitely go for. And the more of those stories we can tell, the better.
Yeah. I remember when I first was checking out the site, I was surprised how many women were involved, and again that the CEO is a woman. And at first, my stereotypical shit kicked in. I was like, "Hey, that's not men. That's not right."
Right.
But you're right. It needs to be a conversation. Right? Men living in a bubble and talking amongst themselves about how awesome they are or what a mess they are. It doesn't really help change everything.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's got to be spaces for everything. Like, I think. Men's group, a bunch of guys getting together and talking about men's issues, I think can be very powerful. But I've gained, I think, more, personally from coming at it from a more broad perspective and having women. Like I mentioned earlier how, a lot of readers become writers, right? Someone will comment and say like, well, what about that? Well, they're like, okay, well, why don't you write about that? So we have a Facebook page called the Goodman Project Writers Group, which is a source of fascinating discussions. Someone can just drop an article in there. But I've done more sort of difficult change yourself, change perspective work, talking about those issues, men's issues with women and women's issues with men, that I think that the space for that's also very, very important. Yeah, I agree.
And what we find is come up in almost every episode of Real Men Feel is that, most men's issues are human issues. And we have a lot more in common with what we're dealing with, what we're challenged by than most people kind of want to admit.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think there's this big layer of human issues. We talk about the man box at the Good Men Project, which is not a term we invented, but you can search for it, and it's really a way of talking about sort of traditional masculinity and how that can be constricting for men and boys, and what impact it can have and how powerful it is. But there definitely are men's issues, I think, that arise from those cultural standards that are important to deal with. And I think it's important that we give people a space and that we're a home to talk about those issues. But I think many issues, like you said, are really human issues. But there are guys, and I've learned that every time, when we talk about rape culture, right? Like so a lot of the things we process, we process through the lens of current events, right? So when the Stanford swimmer rape stuff happened, we wrote a lot about it. It's troubling, right? And you look at the numbers, and they're 1 in 3 or 1 in 4, women are raped or sexually assaulted. Like those are terrible numbers. And yet there are some. So I think it's important to have that conversation and say, yeah, like that, all the mass shootings in this country, are essentially like white men. Women aren't running around murdering people and so these are, but sometimes you will get people. So when I wrote an article about the Stanford rape case, you do get that class of commenter who says, oh, what about men? Like, women abuse men, and it's true, and that's an issue, and it's actually sort of underreported. But to me, there's kind of a time and a place, and so, but you do get people who are knee jerk, like, no, this is men. It's about men. Why are you writing about this? Well, we're writing about this because of the statistics and because of what happened. But I think there's got to be room for both. Right. That's been my view.
Yeah. So it's good. Is there a stated mission of the Good Men Project? Is it to help people break out of that man box, or something else?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you go to the About page, it's probably it's something like that. But I think it's really what it really is to sort of explore the diversity of modern man, and that's pretty broad. But if you come at it from sort of any issue, we're very inclusive and progressive. And I think what it really is to help men address certainly, men's issues. I think a lot of them arise from that man box. Men have problems making deep friendships and connecting deeply, and that whole sort of man up, toughen up, and sort of not connect on an emotional level. But for us, we want to be a space where people, through their experience and through their stories and through the way they connect, to show that there's this massive diversity of masculinity, and that it's all part of being a man.
Yeah. I think one of the things that has really struck me about all of the articles and all the conversations that have been taking place within that space of the Good Man Project is that it really is with that goal of reaching that space of understanding. Allowing people to share their stories, to speak not at each other, but with each other. That's one of the things that really has struck me about the whole project, and it just, for me, just makes me really thrilled to see that happening, because I've been saying this for a little while now, which is the only way that we as human beings, men, women, and so forth, can truly reach that space where we're having conversations that don't get us upset is if we reach that space of understanding.
Yeah. Look, it's interesting. I think we're also in a world where I think we're more polarized than ever, and it's difficult in so many topics to actually have a conversation with empathy and with connection, with understanding of different perspectives. But I think it's actually interesting that the tagline for the Good Men Project, when they created it 6 years ago, was the conversation no one else is having, and that's really kind of what we're doing when we started these social interest groups, which are really these issue-based communities where we come together and have conversation. I was like, oh, that lines up great with that tagline, but it's actually just the way we've evolved, and I think that is kind of what makes us special. To have a place for that. I came in.
Go ahead.
So now we do that thing where we both did that thing. I'll go. I came in the Good Men Project through the mental health door. I wrote a story that was published anonymously about my struggle with depression. But soon after that, I met some of the writers, and I can't. They're actually looking for someone to to help write for their sports section, because sports is this great way to connect to guys. They felt like they weren't doing enough. And I remember Lisa came and pitched to me because I was coaching my son Little League Baseball, and that was sort of this fascinating sort of microcosm of life and issues. And I was playing pickup basketball, and that was this really interesting case study in male friendship, So there were these little articles that I would written in my head that I thought would be fun to share. And she came and she said, we're looking for someone to write sports and to sort of use sports as a platform to talk about social issues. And I was like, well, I could write about Little League Baseball. And so I joined up, but I wrote some really, we're not like ESPN writing about sports. We're not going to talk about, the box score of yesterday's, basketball game but we write about social issues. So issues of bullying that you see in sports. One of the biggest, most viral pieces of sports, something that happened in New Jersey with football. We've written about domestic violence and athletes' privilege.
Could you back up a second?
So that's all the bad stuff, but also about So we've written about those difficult social issues, but also about highlighting the good aspects of sports and community.
All right, we keep losing you. Michael, we keep losing you in that story.
Sure.
Did you lose it too, Appio? Did he freeze?
Yeah, I did. So maybe if you could back up a little bit and talk about what you were talking, pick up where you did with the New Jersey, the story that went viral regarding the New Jersey athletics, and then kind of take it from there. That's if you're still with us, because it looks like you're frozen at the moment.
Yeah, seems like New Jersey has a bad connection today.
It happens.
Are you back with us?
Here, let me try this.
It's all good.
All right, we need some filler music. Da 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 da. Keep that Benny Hill music as we run around.
Maybe I'll leave and come back.
Which we could always do that as well. In the meantime, if for the folks who are who are participating or watching and listening, if you do have any questions, by all means, feel free to toss those questions into the chat. We'll monitor that and we'll read those out. And if you want to just raise your hand virtually or otherwise, let's unmute Michael here. So that way, there we go.
How's that? I left and came back.
Sounds a little better for sure. We'll just roll with it. We keep doing that anyway, so we're always good.
So here
we go.
I went close to my router here. So the wonders of modern technology. Sorry about that. So
that's okay.
What I was saying was, so I live in New Jersey, and there was a story about this football powerhouse, that had won 5 out of 6 state championships, and this big story broke that the seniors were hazing the freshmen and really, terrible. What happened? The right thing, they investigated, and they said, we're going to stop the football season while we investigate all this. And all the parents said, wait, you can't stop the football season. This is, you're taking football away from my kid. And I was like, has the world gone crazy? Like, hazing, this weird sexual hazing, is this sort of a one-off thing, or is this happening more broadly? And also, why is the attitude that football is more important than investigating this? And so I wrote this article that got picked up by the BBC and reprinted in Salon. To me, it was a way of using, football to talk about this difficult cultural issue. And so I think a lot of what we do, and it was a long answer, and I got disconnected 3 times in the middle of it. But a lot of what we do is try and use these paths whether it's sports or whether it's a personal story, to get at these issues that are difficult to talk about or not often talked about, and especially by guys.
So is that story of yours going viral kind of what hooked you in, or you already a constant contributor and working with the project? Or
Yeah, no, that actually did hook me in. I when I started, so I was one of 3 sports editors, and I was told it was a quote unquote easy lift. I could just write my little league story and, go be a lawyer, which is my day job. And then within 2 weeks, one guy kind of left and the other guy disappeared. And I was the senior sports editor of the Good Men Project, and I had no idea what I was doing. But I wrote that piece, and what was amazing is, it got picked up all over the place, and people that I didn't know were reaching out to me, like sending an email or like connecting through Facebook. And they said, this happened to me in high school, or this happened to me in college. And then this woman from Australia who was a psychologist reached out to me, and she said, are you going to the conference in Newark on this issue on men who are survivors of sexual assault? And I was like, what conference? And she said, oh, I come from Australia every year for 15 years. And I was like, well, I live pretty close. And I went to the conference, and there were these, hundreds of men there who had been through this either in connection with sports or otherwise. So that the power of a story to connect to people and to meet all sorts of people who said, like, I read your story and that's exactly what happened to me. I was like, okay, we can actually use sports to talk about these issues. We can use this platform to change things. So yeah, that one hooked me pretty good. And then the other thing was men's mental health, in that journey, because like I said, I started writing about men's mental health anonymously, because it was shameful and I was scared I would lose my job if I talked about it openly. My depression, and that was difficult. But over the past 3 years, I've sort of transitioned from, being in that place to writing about it, telling my own story, talked about it at conferences now with like other lawyers about that, to leading this men's mental health group, which was the first social interest group that I led, where we had 25 men, and we put out this amazing video that we created together. We used the hashtag not weak, just human. We each told our story in about 30 or 40 seconds. So to me, not necessarily one story, but just the ability to connect to people in that way is what really hooked me on the Goodman Project.
And so it sounds like it's really having positive effects in the rest of your life too.
Yeah, I think it is. For me, so my day job, I'm a patent lawyer. So I work on inventions, and I do litigation. And it's one thing is the class of people that I've interacted with and who have become such good friends through the Goodman Project are totally different kind of people, and a different part of my brain and my heart is activated. And I found that I really, enjoy writing, and I enjoy, thinking through these issues. And I really wasn't sort of political, and not only political, but I never thought about these issues. I never thought about these like gender issues. I never thought there was such a thing as depression. Like I just was kind of going through my life and doing my thing. And so to me, being able to talk about these issues and connect to people has been fascinating, and it has helped me in my life. I think it's really kind of opened up a lot of things.
I know I was just going to ask a question, and it just went from my mind. That happens a lot to me. Period.
Even when you host a podcast, it happens.
Exactly. Even in the middle of a podcast, it happens.
See, I saw the up your face, like he's got a question. I gave you the pause,
and I'm like, oh crap, there it went.
Well, so Michael, you talked about speaking opportunities and things like that showing up. So is that at all a common experience that people get involved as writers or readers or editors with the Good Men Project? It expands beyond the website, kind of a thing.
Sure. So we definitely do attract a lot of writers who want to or learn that they are really good storytellers and want to learn how to grow their platform and figure out how to grow their brand. And we've had, I think, a lot of success stories of writers who have gone from the Good Men Project to larger publications and have speaking opportunities, or I know some people who've written books and been able to go through that path. So that's certainly available, and I see it. For me, I haven't quite pursued that path. The speaking opportunities came kind of randomly, but it was actually interesting. I knew I used to go to these legal conferences, for business development and patent lawyers who talk about patent law stuff. But I think it speaks to the fact that the more you're yourself, kind of the more the world opens up to you, even when you don't think that's the case. Because when I first started writing for the Goodman Project, right, I'm in a law firm, lawyers bill by the hour, often many hours. So I was always kind of worried, like, what if someone sees, my article and they know that I'm writing, doing patent law? They're going to think I'm a slacker or whatever. And also, like, when you're writing about, the anal rape of high school students in, New Jersey college football or high school football, that's not like a comfortable topic to talk about with your stodgy law partners. So on those levels, I kind of just like hit it, and I never talked about it. And when we got to, there was this one, I wrote a piece. I lived in Japan for a couple of years, and I wrote a piece about Japanese baseball and sort of called the cultures, and one of my law partners saw it, and he shared it firm-wide. He's like, "Oh, if you want to know about Mike and his experience living in Japan, you should read this article on the Goodman Project." And I was like, "No," but what's interesting is so I know this guy who's another lawyer, and I knew him through conferences. But I became Facebook friends with him, and he saw I often posted my articles, and that was the stuff that he was interested in and that we talked about. He's like, "Oh, he started sending me articles, and we talk about things, social justice type issues, and masculinity stuff." And it just so happened this was a couple months ago. He was supposed to be at a conference, and they lost their keynote speaker. And the woman running the conference asked him if he wanted to be the keynote speaker. He said, actually, he's like, I've got this friend, and he's a lawyer, but like he's also a writer, and he talks about social issues and mental health and masculinity. And he's like, you should ask him. And so they asked me to be the keynote speaker. And I said, okay, I'll do it, but what should I talk about? And he said, you should talk about like the Goodman Project stuff, not like the law stuff. So I put together this presentation called Lawyering While Human, kind of a riff on like Driving While Black. But it was really about sort of being authentic, and that there's actually great power in coming to work like with your authentic self. And I talked about all sorts of things that I probably would have, that 3 years ago, I would have never talked about in front of a room full of lawyers, like including depression, the fact that I spend all this time writing about all these sort of controversial topics. And it was really cool. And a lot of people came up to me afterwards, and they were like, that was really, cool to talk about that stuff. And so yeah, I haven't, written a big book or become a big public speaker, but I think it's been interesting to me, in so many ways, the way you can connect to people is just by being kind of more open, and the tendency for so much was to be like closed and separate. Yeah. It just kind of works.
Yeah, I love that you started off as consciously trying to keep it separate and not let the legal world even know about this, and now you're a keynote speaker about authenticity. And so that's right. That journey is, and I'd say that's the sort of journey that's available to anyone that starts visiting the site and by reading and commenting and subscribing to things and getting active in all your different Facebook groups or checking out some of the classes. That there's really a whole world of opportunity to delve deeper into yourself as a man, as a human being, and into a lot of societal issues that are going on right now.
And there's a great comment here from Lori about all of that, kind of good segue, and talking about how so often people hide who they are, and as the true you steps out, it gives permission for others to do the same. Like in your experience, Michael, you stepping out, being a human, being a lawyer and human simultaneously, which reminds me of a joke about how lawyer, the chances of a lawyer becoming a human. I don't think I can repeat that, but
Well, that points out that you're dealing with another stereotype.
I've heard them all.
Of lawyers and the stereotype of men and everything you got going on.
No, that's a great comment, Lori.
Yeah.
I think it's so true. I see it. We did a call for submissions with an organization called Stigma Fighters, focused on men. See, my internet connection is unstable. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good. So we did a call for submissions saying, guys who are dealing with mental health issues, just tell us your story. And I wrote mine, and we posted a couple others that we had, and people really stepped up. And like the more, and we put in we made kind of a chapter in this collection, and so it grew. And the more people do that, the more comfortable people are, with it. And I think it's so true. It's so true. It enables other people to take that step.
Yeah. And that actually reminded me of a comment that I was going to make a little bit earlier. It's more of a comment versus a question. That is, how fascinating it is that we've had conversations with other folks who have experience in the mental health world, and not so many that have been in the legal professions, but certainly in conversations that I've had with people that are in both worlds. That seems to be like one of the biggest stigmas in the mental health world. It's almost, even though people are dealing with those mental health challenges regularly, they're afraid of stepping out and talking about their own mental health challenges. Same thing with lawyers. In fact, Andy and I both have a very, very good friend down in Alabama who's a divorce lawyer who has just blown the lid off of being open and human and an attorney at the same time. Yeah. And it's fascinating to see the journey, how as one person decides to go ahead and step out facing the fear, how so many others start to say, okay, now that somebody else has given me permission, I'm going to go ahead and share my story as well. And it becomes like this not an avalanche per se, but certainly a good flowing river of stories.
Yeah, no, for sure. There's this quote by an author that I like, David Foster Wallace, who was an amazingly talented author and dealt with his own mental health issues. But he in one of his books or essays, he said, if you walk down the street and everyone you walk up to, you can look at that person in the eye and stop and say, "What's wrong?" And they might laugh and be like, "What are you talking about? Nothing's wrong." And you just look in the eye and just say, no, really, what's wrong? Like eventually, they'll be like this, because every person that's walking around is carrying something that's wrong, and it shouldn't be shameful. It's just being human. And I think the other part of being human is that we crave connection. And I think there's social issues and cultural issues, especially. I see it. It's so hard for men. You're not supposed to talk about this. You're supposed to just man up. So I think it is, there are human issues and men's issues. And I think mental health is an even more difficult issue for men because of that cultural stigma. But it really is it's just when you realize that if you just talk about stuff that everyone's kind of got something, it sort of takes the edge off a little bit.
Yeah, that's how I find the first person to be open and authentic and honest about something, that opens the door for everybody else. And, human beings, we have mirror neurons that really help us to trigger the emotion we're seeing in another person. So if you're seeing someone be open and honest, like, oh, I can do that too now. So I think that kind of the same thing applies. But one thing that keeps people quiet is fear of being judged. And it just hits me that, lawyers are literally being judged all day long. So it's that extra tough to get over that fear, I imagine.
Get double whammy.
For sure. I think that speaks to another cultural issue a challenge that we face, and this cuts across all cultures around the entire world, and that is this idea and this perception that somehow we need permission from outside of ourselves in order to be able to do something. And this can be especially true in societies where individualism or individualistic thinking is frowned upon. And so, by having these conversations, by really putting these stories out there, I see it as being a way to reframe not only the conversation, but reframe give people the permission for themselves, not from outside, but understand that the permission can come from within themselves to be able to just step out and be human.
Yeah, no, that's an amazing. It's a really interesting insight, and it reminds me of your earlier question about sort of Western cultures and different cultures, and it reminded me when you were talking about cultures that are more individualistic versus more sort of group think, and it reminded me of I lived in Japan for a couple of years back in 2008, 2009, and I mean that's a sort of fascinating culture, and it's a culture that I think is even more difficult for men because it's even harder to express and change. And they have an expression there that if you stick out like a nail, like you get hammered back down. So everyone kind of heads down. But yeah, it's interesting kind of the interplay, because I think we get there are reasons that cultures evolve, and that we have rules and that and laws and order, but and we're not just all sort of raging around doing our individual thing, but it has a cost. I think it's really interesting seeing it in different cultures.
Yeah, for sure. And understanding the cost can help the culture preserve its identity, and at the same time give people the room to maneuver.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the Good Men Project has different levels of payment. Can people also be involved at no cost, or how does it work for people?
Absolutely. So our articles, everything we write, the website, the Facebook group is free. The membership that we offer is at 3 different levels, and basically there's a $5 level that's called a bronze membership, and you get a bronze commenting badge, but you get to participate in those weekly Friday calls. And supporting us at the $5 level, I think is kind of like Wikipedia, just saying, hey, like if you support us, you want to be part of our community.
So it's $5 a year.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Dang.
That's kind of no-brainer. $20 a year. You're a gold member. You get to take any one class. So I mentioned we offer classes to help people grow their networks, classes on social change, classes on the art of political resistance, and you can also participate in any one of the social interest groups. We have about 10 of them now, and with plans to roll out more of them. And then the platinum is $50 a year, which is still far less than the price of a cup of coffee these days. And that's kind of the all access pass. You can participate in any of the social interest groups, or all of them. You can take any class, and all those. We have a premium members Facebook group where all those premium members can join. So yeah, the site's free, and you don't have to be a member. To shift our model, like I said earlier, from being to a community that makes, where our business model is we give you value. We give you, there's a reason you want to be part of this community, because it grounds you and it helps you process the world, and it helps you come together with people who care about the issues that you care about. And that's what we're trying to do through kind of our social interest group communities.
Cool. And it really sounds like it's still very organic, that any commenter, any reader can become a writer, and they can just suggest a different group. It just seems very fluid. Is that accurate?
It is. It's interesting. I mentioned that I did come in the door by writing that anonymous piece on mental health, but a few weeks later they had a poetry contest, and it was a haiku poetry, so it's pretty low impact, right? It's just a few syllables, and it was on masculinity. And so I submitted a poem, and it got published. And time was this brilliant poet who went on to do great things. But I found out, eventually I became, a lead editor and an executive editor. And there's this other guy named Wilhelm who was also an executive editor. And there are only 4 executive editors. And we were talking, and we realized that we submitted haiku poems that were published literally a day apart. So we were just readers, and we were like, oh, a poem, and that's kind of how it happened. Like I see it happening. I see people go through that same journey that I went through, where I was like, like masculinity. I never thought about that before. Oh, gender issues and social. I never. And then you're like, oh, that's a really interesting article, and you're having a conversation, on Facebook or in some group, and you share something, and someone's like, oh, you should write about that, and you're like, okay, I guess I could try writing about that, and then their thing gets published, and then it gets shared everywhere. And I see this with a bunch of the folks in my mental health group. We had 8 people that participated in our PSA, in our Not Weak Just Human PSA. Like he'd never written before. He participated in the group because he was a young father who was raising an autistic boy, and that's why that's how he found his way to the mental health issue. And he wrote about it, and it was people reached out to him and connected to him, and he realized, and now he writes every week for us. Right, and that's how people, and you sort of see it happen with people. They move up the chain, they become editors, they become people who want to lead a social interest group, right? And I see that happening all the time. And that's part of the participatory nature of it all.
That's awesome.
So it's a big window of opportunity, invitation, however far you want to take it, and you can even enter via low impact poetry if that's the case.
Exactly.
I love that term. I had never heard that term.
I love that. Low impact poetry. That's great. New term for us to use now. That's great. A couple of questions from the chat here from Jeremy. First question is this: are there any live seminars that people can participate in? And the second question is, are you interested in incorporating partnerships with others, expanding this conversation? And if so, how would that work?
So yes and yes. So yes, there are live seminars that we give, and those are available for either the gold or platinum members. So we have classes on social change. We have a number of different classes. If you're sort of inclined to be a writer and want to learn how to write and how to grow your network and maybe write a book or become a speaker someday, those we have classes and seminars. We have done some live events and hope to do more. And we're always interested in sort of partnering and growing and expanding the conversation. And that's part of kind of my wheelhouse as the director of special projects. We love doing that. I love connecting with people who have a perspective and might want to write something or have already written something, or whether it's in any format, whether it's a video or audio or podcast like this. We've done all that. We're always looking to sort of grow our tent. So yeah, I'd be happy to talk about that offline for sure.
Cool. And so what's the best way for people to reach you if they do want to discuss something directly with you, or the best way to get involved with Good Men Project overall?
So I mean, Good Men Project, you can go to the website, you can sign up to get our email newsletter every day. If you're inclined to write, we have writing prompts that we send out twice a week. Things that the editors would love to just see people write about. And we collect those topics, and it's like, and if you build it, they will come kind of thing. We throw that out into the world, and sometimes people say, oh, I'll write about that thing. So I'm on the masthead. If you just go to goodmenproject.com, you can find my email address. I am hopelessly addicted to Facebook, and I'm a serial oversharer. So you can find me on Facebook, Michael Kasdan. You can find me on Twitter at Michael Kasdan. So yeah, any number of ways you can reach out. But yeah, the Good Men Project, just hit the site, and there's a way. If you want to become a member of our community, there's a registration page where you can become a member. If you want to just be a reader and get on our email list, that's a good way to enter. And if you're someone who has an interesting topic that you might want to write about, just drop me an email, and you can just chat about it that way and get it up on the site.
Cool. And I can give a testimonial as to how easily and supported and really wonderful it is getting involved. It wasn't even a month ago that I talked with Michael about being on the show. And since that time, I've taken I think I've taken 2 classes. I've had 3 articles posted to the site already. So it's very welcoming. The barrier to entry is extremely low impact. I'll say it that way.
That's what we're looking for.
Yeah.
No, I mean, look, we're looking to grow and scale. Right. The more people that are having this conversation, the more I think it's valuable to as a community. And like I said, everything we do, everything I do, like I want to create community around it, and I want to change the world. And so we need people, and we're all about diversity and masculinity. So we want to welcome people into our conversation, no matter what the issue or the person or the perspective. I think it benefits all of us.
Cool. And there's another T-shirt, as opposed to, or in addition, maybe low impact poetry's on the front, and I want to create community and change the world's on the back, man. Or we can put that into a haiku somehow. We need
Work on it.
or twiku if you put it on Twitter.
Cool. Well, I'm going to wrap this up again, make it very crystal clear that the Good Men Project is at goodmenproject.com. And keep that clear. I'm gonna track down all the the PSA, some of the articles that were mentioned. I'm gonna include those in the show notes that you'll find at realmenfeel.org. And thanks for joining us, Michael. I know something about the project since we first met, but I learned even more tonight.
Right.
And I didn't only learn, Good Men Project, MEN.
Yes.
Thanks. Because that's a mistake. Even in writing about this, I kept flipping back and forth of how I would refer to it. But
there are many of us. Yes.
Great. Cool.
Oh,
Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
It was a pleasure. And
sure.
And thank you again, Appio, for being an outstandingly good man.
You as well, Andy. Supported by an outstandingly good woman who always joins us every week. Lori, good to see you.
Yeah, thanks to all of our live viewers. Thanks to all the questions in the chat room, the support. Real Men Feel will be live again next Tuesday, February 7th at 8 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be joined by Destin Garrick. He is an expert in Neo-Tantra, and I have no idea what that means, and sexuality education. We're going to be talking about redefining sex, power, and success. And this, again, we've had a lot of sexual themes this year, so I seem to think that's, the tonic for what ails us kind of politically and socially might just be sex. So there you have it.
If 2017 is the year of sex, so be it.
Yeah.
So be it.
All right, bring it on. Thanks again, everybody.
Good night, folks.
Bye-bye.